Welcome to MDL Crochet, this tutorial on the Tunisian Crochet Hexagon Cardigan. This project is made with 2 hexagon panels sewn together. Your measurements will be from center breastbone to wrist. You'll make your hexagon to that measurement. For this project, I used a 2-weight yarn or sport, 550 yards or 502 meters of yarn. You will be working with 2 skeins or balls of yarn at the same time, one for the forward pass and one for the return pass. For this project, I made my hexagon to a measurement of 17 inches or 43 centimeters. So before we get into the project, let's look at the tools we're going to need. So this tutorial is designed to be adjustable to the size that you need. On the screen is how you will be conducting your measurements to determine the size of your hexagon. Now, for this tutorial, you're going to need double-ended Tunisian crochet hooks. You could have the basic, smaller double-ended ones, the longer ones, or if you have sets that allow you to connect 2 sizes together. Remember, your forward pass would need to be the larger size that you're wanting to use this for the yarn that you're wanting to use, and half a size lower for the return pass. Or if you have cabled set, instead of putting a stopper on one end, you can connect another hook as long as the forward pass is done in the proper size that you want and the return pass is done in a half a size smaller. So let's go ahead and get into doing this tutorial. So for this tutorial, you will need a minimum of 2 skeins of yarn, one for the forward pass and one for the return pass. You'll also need 6 stitch markers of one color and just one of a different color. And of course, your hook that is size appropriate that you're wanting to use for your hexagon cardigan. So we're going to start with the magic circle, and this is a modified magic circle because we're going to be adding a little bit more stitches into the magic circle to help us create our hexagon as well as create the wave that we're looking for. So to start our magic circle, just take your yarn, lay it in your palm, take your pointer and your middle finger, or your index and middle finger, stick them out. Take the yarn, roll it over, roll your fingers, and roll the yarn back, and then back over. Take your pinky and hold the yarn. You'll take your hook, go under, over, twist it, slide it down, rotate it, because you're locking it now, yarn over and pull up just a slip stitch right there. And now it's locked. Now what we need to do is put 12 single crochets into our magic circle. So single crochets just go into the circle, yarn over, pull up the loop, yarn over, and pull that loop that's on your hook through the other 2. That is a single crochet. I like to take my solo stitch colored stitch marker and place it in that very first single crochet so I know where the first one's at when we get ready to start doing counting, and it just makes life easier. Now we need to put 11 more single crochets into our magic circle. It's 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, and 12. Now if you didn't count or you lost count, you can just loosen up your loop and then count backwards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and number 12 is where our stitch marker's at. Insert your hook back into the elongated loop, tighten it down, and then we're going to take our smaller end and we're going to pull on it. Now our magic circle is going to start closing up on us, and that is what we want. Now we have to put 2 single crochets into every single crochet that we just did, so we'll have a total of 24. So we know where our first one needs to go, so we need to go ahead and take that stitch marker out and place our 2 into that single crochet. So 1 and 2. Again, we just did 2, so 1, 2. I like to put a stitch marker. Makes counting a lot easier. That's 2 out of 24, so continue on down, putting 2 into every single crochet that we just pulled up from the round prior. And I will meet you back when we have a total of 24. So now we have our 24. We need to add a slip stitch where our stitch marker is, which is the very first one we did. So we'll just put a slip stitch, which is just pull up a loop, and slip it off. Now this is where you can switch out your hooks to your double-ended. Now I'm using cabled, so just allow me just one moment to hook up my cable. So now the stitch that we just pulled up, which is that slip stitch, we'll take our solo colored stitch marker and we're going to place it onto it. The reason why is this is going to start every round we do. Now we're going to go right back into where we just pulled up the slip stitch. So now what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over, and then we're going to go right back into where we pulled up that slip stitch and pull up a loop. These are our increases. And for the increases, what I like to do for the first few rounds to make them visible is I like to put a stitch marker on that increase. Now the increase is the yarn over. So you could put a stitch marker on the yarn over. And that's where you got 6 of these for, because we'll be doing 6 total of these yarn overs. Now for the next 3 single crochets, you're just going to pull up 1 loop out of them. So go through it, yarn over, pull up a loop. That's 1. There's 2, and there's 3. And then we're going to go into the next one, pull up a loop, yarn over. Then after the yarn over, you're going to go right back into that stitch and pull up another loop. And then you have 3 out of that 1. Then put your stitch marker on the increase. And then it's 1 simple stitch in each of the next 3 single crochets we did. So 1, there's 2, there's 3. Then we're going to go into the next one, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back in and pull up a loop. And of course, stitch marker on that yarn over, so you'll know where our increases are. Now we need to start taking some of these loops off. We have quite a few loops here, and we need to take some off. So what we're going to do is going to take all of this and slide it to the other end of the hook. which is your double-ended, or for me it's cabled. So just slide it all the way down, and then we're going to rotate. And this is where if you're using the cabled, you'll be using your smaller size or the same size if you have multiples of the same set. So now you'll be pulling in your second skein of yarn. You can add it however you like to add it. But I like to make sure that the tail is always in the back so it's easier to weave, because if we would have left it the other way, the tail would have been in the front. And then we just chain 1 to start our return pass. So chain 1. And then you're going to yarn over and pull through 2. And you're going to yarn over and pull through 2, repeating that until you only have 3 loops left on your hook. Now we have just the 3 loops left on our hook. We're going to go ahead and slide it all the way down to the other side, flip it around, and slide it down. So now we're at the other side. Now we can continue pulling up loops for our forward pass. So it's a simple stitch in each of the next 3 single crochets. 1, there's 2, and 3. And then we're going to go into the next one, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go back in and pull up a loop. It's our increase, so we need to mark our increase. Then we're going to pull up a simple stitch in the next 3 single crochets, and then the very next single crochet we're going to do our increase, which is yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back in, and pull up a loop. And then we're going to isolate that yarn over so we'll know where it's at. And then we need to discharge some stitches, so slide it back down for the return pass. And then the return pass is done again with just a yarn over and pull through 2. Yarn over, pull through 2, to where you're going to only leave just 3 loops left on your hook. Now we switch it to the forward pass. And since we just did our increase, now we need to pull up our 3 simple stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. And then the very next one we go into pull as a simple stitch and then yarn over and go right back in as a simple stitch. And then isolate our yarn over. And then we're going to do 3 simple stitches. 1, 2, and 3. And our round is complete because we're at our next part of our round. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pull up a simple stitch into where we isolated with the solo colored stitch marker. Yarn over and pull up a simple stitch. And then you could take your stitch marker and move it up to that stitch, that solo colored stitch marker, because this is our end in our beginning of our round. This is the end of our round. So now that we've ended our round and we're into the next round, where we have our stitch markers here, we're going in as a knit stitch. You can move the stitch marker if you need to. We're going in as a knit stitch. So there's a front and a back to that loop. This is the yarn over. Go in as a knit stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Then we're going to yarn over and go right back in as a knit stitch. It's called a knit stitch increase. So every round that we do increases by 2 in an odd number. We start with 3, now we're going to be doing 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we need to discharge stitches off of our hook, so go ahead and slide it down for the return pass. Now for the return pass, again, it's exactly what we've been doing, a yarn over it and pull through 2. So continue doing that until you only have 3 loops left on your hook, and then slide it down for the forward pass. And I'll see you in just a second. So now that we have 3 loops just left on our hook, we're going to go ahead and slide it for the forward pass. This does create a wavy action, as you are seeing. Unlike the standard Tunisian in the round, this will not lay flat. You do not want it to lay flat. So we're going to finish this round, and you'll use the same exact steps for every round. And just remember that they do increase by 2 in an odd number. So now that we have our stitch marker here, we can go ahead and remove it. And we know we're doing a knit stitch increase. So that's a knit stitch into that yarn over, and go right back into that knit stitch and pull up that loop. Then it's 5 simple stitches right after. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This stitch marker got caught in the return pass, but that is where our increase is. So we go in as a knit stitch, yarn over, and go right back in as a knit stitch. And we've done our increase. Now let's go ahead and discharge some stitches. And the return pass is always the same. So yarn over and pull through 2 until you only have that 3 loops left on your hook. And then 3 loops left on the hook, so I need to slide it down for the forward pass. We just did our increase, so we need to pull up 5 simple stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we're at an increase. So it's a knit stitch increase, so go in as a knit stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go back in as a knit stitch. And we're doing 3 loops out of that knit stitch. And then it's 5 simple stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then it's another knit stitch increase. So you'll go in as a knit stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go back in as a knit stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Let's go ahead and discharge some of these loops off of our hook. So go ahead and slide it down to the opposite side, flip it around, and start your return pass. And remember, with the return pass, you need to keep at least 3 loops left on your hook, so that way it doesn't slide off. So yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, so you only have that 3 loops left. So now that we only have the 3 loops left, now we can slide it back for our forward pass. So go ahead and slide it all the way down, flip it around, and now we start our forward pass. We just did an increase, so we need to do 5 simple stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we have an increase. So we do a knit stitch increase. So go in as a knit, yarn over, pull up that loop, yarn over, and go back in as a knit. That is our increase. And then we have 5 simple stitches right after our increase. 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're ending our round now. That's what this stitch marker is telling us, is we're ending our round. And there's 5. We have one more stitch. We have one more to do because we're on a new round. So we need to do a new simple stitch. That's a total of 6. The last round will always be the odd plus 1. Just so you'll always know, and you could take the stitch marker from the previous round and move it into that number 6 that we just pulled up for this section. And then we need to go ahead and discharge some stitches. So go ahead and flip it to the other side and do your return pass till you only have the 3 loops left on your hook. So now that we have the 3 loops left on our hook, we can go ahead and flip it back. And you can see what I'm talking about by the waviness. That's what we want. We want that wave. So now, this new section starts with our knit stitch increase, and then we pull up 7 simple stitches, knit stitch increase. So each section between the knit stitch increases is an odd number. We did 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, and so forth, so on until you reach your size. Just remember, the last section where our round ends, it's going to be the odd plus 1 for the simple stitches. So go ahead and continue until you get to the appropriate size that you want, and I will come back and I will show you how to join these, sew them together, do the cuff, ribbing, the plackets, etc. So I will see you all here in just a moment. So now you've got it to the length that you want, and we need to go ahead and do our close off. So how we're going to do our close off is you need to start it where we started our actual row starts in the beginning. That's why I kept this stitch marker and just kept rolling it up, so that way I knew this started each round. So we need to go ahead and discharge these stitches off. We need to leave one of our forward pass and one of our return pass. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so now we're just going to leave one of each. Pull our cables back all the way through. Flip your work around. And then we just need to tighten down a little bit. Because now we're going to take and do a slip stitch. And then you're going to do a Tunisian slip stitch all the way around. So you don't need your cables for this. And then you'll go into our increase as a knit stitch and do the slip off, and just continue doing the Tunisian simple stitch slip off. And when you come back around, we'll be able to tighten this our return pass up a little bit more and tie the two together. And I will be back in just a moment after we get done doing all of our Tunisian simple stitch slip stitches. So we're almost at the end, and what I like to do is I like to continue past where we started it, so that way it gives it more strength. That's where we started our switch over. So just go ahead and go a few past to give it that strength. And then I like to always just chain extra, and you can go ahead and snip off your yarns so then you can tie everything off and weave. So go ahead and tie everything off, weave in your ends, because we're going to come back and we're going to fold this project so you can see what we're doing next. I'll be right back. So now that you have all your ends woven in, your hexagon panel will be wavy, and that is what we need. So now we need to fold it to where we can get our shape. And if you fold it like this, you're going to get that shape. That's not what we want. We need to bring it and create our L. And as you can see, we have our panel. And either way, it is fine. It is the exact same measurement on each side. And what we're going to do now is we're going to start our cuff. So now we're about to start our cuff. I like to do the cuff before we seam our sides up. What we're going to do is you're going to take a cabled hook that was the exact same size as you made the hexagon in, and we're going to start our cuff that way. And how we're going to do it, we're going to start in the gaps that are created from our increases. Go ahead and place your hook and grab your yarn. It could be any new color or the same colors, whatever you decide. It is your cardigan. And I like to start with the slip knot. I like to have everything just secure. And then just pull up that loop. And then every space where we do not have a simple stitch, but it's just the space between the two simple stitches, that's where we're going to be pulling up our loops all the way down. So just insert your hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And you're going to do that all the way down. And then we're going to do a modified end stitch, because now what we're doing is with our cuff is we're going to start trying to make it tight. Otherwise this stays like bell bottoms. It's wide and it's open, and we want it to kind of cuff around our wrist more. The cuff will be more closer to our wrist and not just hanging loose. So go ahead and continue pulling up all your simple stitches all the way down, and I'm going to show you how we're going to handle the return pass. So for our cuff, we started at one increase and we ended at the very next increase. And our return pass is going to be a little bit different. And we're doing it a little different because that'll give us an easier and smoother edge and a lot cleaner of an edge for when we sew our panel together. So we have our last stitch up. Normally we would yarn over and chain one. Well, we're not going to be doing that because we need a nice, smooth, clean edge. So you're going to yarn over and pull through two. You just need to remember that there are two stitches there. And what I like to do is I like to put a stitch marker on that. And then you're just going to yarn over, pull through two all the way down to the end until you only have one loop left on your hook. And I will be back and we will come and start the next row. So the next 4 rows are done exactly the same. You're going to go through 2, 1, 2, yarn over and pull up a loop. That's simple stitching 2 together. And then you're going to do 3 simple stitches. 1, 2, and 3. Simple stitch 2 together. 1, 2, yarn over, pull up that loop. And this is going to help bring in our cuff, make it fit more snug against our wrist. Now we're going to do 3 simple stitches. 1, 2, 3, and simple stitch 2 together. Repeat that all the way down, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do the end stitch again. I'll see you here in just a moment once we get all the way down. So now we're getting close to the end. There's 1, 2, and 3, and since we're here at the end and we have that end stitch, we're just going to go through the side stitch that we stitched together and our end and just pull that up. We're going to simple stitch those together. And then we're going to do our modified return pass. So it's yarn over and pull through 2. Just remember you have 2 stitches here and you will have to go through them depending on the sequence or your width. And then you just do a standard return pass, and then you're just going to repeat what we just did for 3 more rows. Your increases aren't going to line up, and that's fine. And then we're going to start the little ribbing aspect of this cuff. And I will come back as soon as we get all 3 of these additional rows done. I'll see you in just a moment. So now that you completed the additional 3 more rows of the decreasing, you can see how it's pulling in, and that's what we want. So now what we're going to do is start our ribbing, and you will be doing 6 rows of our ribbing. And our ribbing will start with a knit stitch and then a purl. And you'll alternate the knit stitch and purl all the way down to the end. And we will be doing a standard return pass. Not the modified that we did below, but just a standard return pass. So continue doing the knit stitch, purl stitch alternating, and you'll do 6 total rows. I'm going to go ahead and I'll meet you at the end so we can do the standard return pass, and I will see you in just a moment. Now we're getting close to the end, and again it's just a knit and then a purl, just alternating that all the way down, and then just do a standard return pass. So we'll just do our edge stitch and then chain 1 and then yarn over and pull through 2, and that's how we're going to do this next 6 rows for our ribbing. And you'll put the knit stitch on top of knit stitch, purl up on top of purl, and that'll create our ribbing for our cuff. So I will see you all in just a moment when we get done with our cuff, and we're going to go close it off. So now that you have done your 5 rows of alternating knit and purl stitches, our ribbing, now we're going to do our close off. And to do our close off, you're going to pull up like you would a simple stitch and just slip it off. And you're going to do that in every stitch all the way down. And once you get all the way down to the end, then you'll just fasten off your yarn and weave in that tail. And then we'll come back for the next part of this pattern, which will be sewing our panel together. I'll see you in just a moment. So now that we have our cuff done, I left the beginning tail pretty long so that way we can sew it together, but we're not going to sew it together just yet. We need to do a little bit of measuring marking. So go ahead and just take your cuff and just fold it together, and that's going to help you get your angle that you need. We need to measure 1 to 2 inches from this corner, because this corner is what's going to have your collar on it. So I've already pre-measured on the other panel where I need to go. So I need to do the same thing on this panel so that way they line up right. And I already know how many stitches that is, so I'm going to go ahead and place that. And you can measure 1 to 2 inches. It's your preference on that. And now that you have your stitch marker in place, it's going to help you a lot more. Now we're going to turn this inside out. Now that it is inside out, you will take your darning needle and one of the colors that you used for your actual project, and take quite a bit of it because you're going to need it. Thread your darning needle, and then you're going to start sewing. The way I want to start sewing this is I like to go from, because there's where we put our stitch marker. We don't want to go in that, but we want to go down to the one below. And I want to go from the outside stitch, which is the stitch that's going to be facing us on the back, and do the exact same thing on the other side. And just sew it all the way down. And then when you get to the cuff, use what you had from the tail of the cuff to sew the cuff and work back, and then tie the two together so that way they don't come loose. So continue sewing, and we'll come back and continue the next part of this, which is sewing our 2 panels together. I'll see you in just a moment. So now that you have your 2 panels done, you're going to be joining them in the back, inside out. So what we need to do is line up your 2 panels and we will be sewing them up through our back and keeping the seam on the inside. So do what we did on our sleeves, and we'll do that along the back, and we will come back and we will start the next part of this pattern, which will be our ribbing in the bottom. So now that we have seamed our 2 panels together, we're going to go ahead and turn it right side out. Because now we're going to do our bottom ribbing. And the way we're going to do this is pretty much how we started our cuffs. You're going to take your hook and you're going to insert it into the space that we did our increase in. Take the yarn color that you want to do your ribbing in and go ahead and pull that up. And then we're going to go into every space and pull up a loop until we get to the opposite side of our cardigan. Go ahead and pull that up and I will be right back with you so we can do the return pass and the next part of this pattern. See you in just a moment. So now that you have pulled up all your loops from your bottom hem from one corner of your bottom side to the other side, now we're just going to do the standard return pass, which for standard return pass is just a chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2. You're going to yarn over, pull through 2, repeating that step until you only have one loop left on your hook, and then we're going to come back and start our ribbing stitch combination. I'll see you in just a moment. So now that you have just a one stitch left, now we're going to be doing our ribbing stitch combination, which is the exact same stitch combination we used on the cuff. It will be one knit, one purl, and you'll alternate those all the way down and then do a standard return pass. There is no modified end stitch, it's just a standard return pass. You'll do the ribbing stitch for a total of 10 rows. That does not include your foundation row. So remember, it is one knit, one purl, one knit, one purl, and you'll stack these. So every row will start with a knit, the very next stitch will be a purl, and you'll just repeat that, and you'll stack the stitches on top of each other. I'm going to go ahead and go off camera to finish these 10 rows, and I'll be right back to close this off, and we can start placket. I'll see you in just a moment. So now that we have just one stitch left, we're going to go ahead and start our close off. And the close off is how we have been doing the close off for this entire project. It is a Tunisian Simple Stitch slip off. So you'll pull up like you would for a Tunisian Simple Stitch, and then you'll just slip it off. You're keeping one loop left on your hook. And you're going to do that in every stitch all the way down. So continue doing your close off stitch, and I'll be right back, and I'll see you in just a moment. So for the packlet, this is how we will be starting it if you are making this for a female. For a male, it would start on this side, and you would just pull up your loops and work all the way down until you get to your corner. We're not going to be doing the collar just yet. So I'm going to show you how we're going to pull up these loops, and we're going to start our pattern. So if you're starting on the left side of your project, you will be putting your hook into the gap of our increase. Grabbing your yarn, yarning over and pulling up all these loops, and you're going to go into every space like as we did down here to pull up your foundation base row. So go ahead and pull up your loops like we have done before. I'm going to show you how we're going to work it on the bottom ribbing. So I'll be right back, and we will be at the bottom ribbing, and I'm going to show you how we're going to work those stitches up. So now we are at our ribbing, where we're going to be pulling our loops up. You can see this knit stitch that goes all the way down. We're going to be working our hook into this knit stitch, not to the side, but into the actual knit stitch. So you'll just take your hook and go straight into the knit stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. And you're going to do that all the way down. And when you get to the last one, then you're going to put the last loop, you're going to pull up the last loop into the actual last row, so that way we can have it all even. And then it's a standard return pass, so you'll chain one, yarn over and pull through two, yarn over, pull through two, all the way down to the end. You only have one loop left on your hook, and we'll meet you when we have that one loop left. So our patterns for our packlet is just a Tunisian reverse stitch. Tunisian reverse stitch is worked into the back bar. The best way I found to do this, instead of just constantly looking backwards, is take your hook, push the yarn back, and going in between that first gap from the side stitch and the next stitch, and working it as a knit stitch from the back. And then you can isolate that back bar, drop your yarn, and pull it up. And you'll just do that all the way down. Do a standard return pass, and you'll be doing a total of 8 rows of reverse stitch. So now that we have just our one loop left after we've completed our 8 rows of reverse stitch, we're going to do a reverse stitch slip off, which is just pull up your reverse stitch like we have been doing. And then we're going to slip it off because we only want that one loop left on our hook. And that's going to close out our project on this portion of it for us. So go ahead and continue doing your reverse stitch, slip off. And then when you get to the end, you'll do your normal end stitch and slip that stitch off and snip your yarn, tie it off, and weave in your ends. And then we're going to start the next placket in just a moment. I'll meet you there in just a second. Now for our next placket, which is the opposite side that we just did. First side was left, this side is the right side. You're just going to insert your hook. You'll see this, the row of knit right underneath our verticals, which is our end stitch. We want to go right at the bottom of that end stitch, and we can pull up our new line of yarn. And then you're just going to do exactly what we did on the opposite side. Pull up your simple stitches, do the return pass, and then do 8 rows of reverse stitch, and then do the close off, and then weave in all your ends, and then we're going to come back and we will do the collar next. So finish your placket, weave in your ends, and we will be back for the collar. See you in just a moment. So if you're wanting to do buttons on your placket, you'll do that by doing yarn overs. So depending on the size of your button, you'll yarn over 1, 2, or 3 times, and you'll skip that many stitches as well. So 1, 2, 3. Then you'll go into the next stitch and continue the pattern for the placket. And then on the return pass, you'll just continue doing your yarn over and pull through 2, and you'll do it a little bit slower here, keeping your fingers on the yarn overs just so you don't slip through. and then continue through. And then your next row will be done as simple stitches. So you'll just pull up the yarn over 1, 2, and this is a yarn over, and 3, and then just continue through with your pattern. Then when you reach the simple stitches that you just did on your yarn over gap, then you'll just work them as a reverse. So that is how you'll add buttons to your project. So let's go ahead and get back into our project. So now that we have both plackets done, now we need to start our collar. So you'll turn your cardigan inside out and then flip it to where the neck is facing you. So now that the neck is facing us, now we need to start working on our collar. So what we're going to do is take our placket, that very last or first stitch next to the cardigan, you're going to insert your hook underneath it. And then you're going to take your yarn that you're going to want for your collar, and we're going to be adding it. Now we're going to be pulling this collar up a little different, and that's just so that it will help lay properly and get the proper stitch that we want for this. So go ahead and then you'll pull up your stitch. So you have your stitch pulled up. Now on the inside, you actually see what's the outside of the cardigan. You're going to be pulling up stitches in every simple stitch that is shown. So we'll just be pulling up simple stitches all the way down, and then do a standard return pass and just continue pulling up every simple stitch. And then when we get to our seams, I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're just about to our seams. Then on the seam, you have one on each side of our seam. So you're going to pull up that simple stitch, one on each side, and then continue all the way down and do the exact same thing again in every seam. So you get both sides of that seam, and then do a standard return pass. And then we're going to come back for the pattern that we're going to use for our collar. We want our collar to match our plackets. So pull up your foundation row and do the return pass, and we'll be right back with the pattern. We're almost at the end, pulling up our simple stitch row, and where you're going to place your last stitch will go into that very first stitch of the placket. And then you're just going to do a standard return pass, which is chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, all the way down to the end until you only have that one loop left on your hook. And then we're going to come back and we are going to work this pattern for our collar. So now that we have completed our return pass, we're going to start our next forward pass, and this is the exact same pattern you will use for a total of 11 rows. So we're going to start row 1. Row 1 starts with a full stitch. The full stitch will take place between the first stitch and the second stitch. You'll just insert your hook into the space, yarn over it, and pull up a loop. And then for every stitch until the end, because we'll come back for the end to do another increase, we'll be doing reverse stitches. So just do a reverse stitches all the way down until we get to the end, and I will be right back and we will do the end stitch. See you in just a moment. So now we're at the last stitch for the reverse, and before we do our end stitch, you're going to insert through the gap, yarn over and pull up a loop. Then you're going to do your end stitch as we normally would. And then it's a standard return pass. So yarn over, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. This row that we just completed, you'll do it for a total of 11 times with the increases, 1 on each end. So go ahead and do your 11 rows, and I will be right back so we can close this collar off and close this project off. I'll see you in just a moment. So now that you have completed your 11 rows for your collar, now you're just going to do the close off, which is a reverse stitch close off. So you'll just go behind as you would for a reverse stitch, and then just slip it off. You only want to keep one loop left on the hook. You'll do that all the way down, and then you'll weave in your end and your project will be done. So continue doing this, the close off, and I will be back with you in just a second. So now that you have finished your collar and woven in all your ends, your Hexicardi is done. And remember, if you found this tutorial helpful, please consider giving me a like and subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated. And leave me a comment. I do like to chit chat. But until next time, folks, keep stitching.